Every little remark, every small problem, if you let it upset you, you hand over your power. The truth is, the strongest people don't have perfect lives. They just know how to stay calm no matter what happens. Imagine walking through life untouched, no more worrying, no more losing your temper, just complete control over yourself. In just a few moments, I'll show you how to train your mind so nothing and nobody can ever bother you again. Once you learn this, you'll never feel trapped by your feelings. You'll take back your power, and nobody will ever be able to shake you. Your power lies in how you react. We've all felt a sting from words meant to hurt, a cold glance meant to diminish. These moments arrive without warning, slipping past our defenses before we even recognize what has happened. A comment that cuts deeper than it should. A dismissal that echoes long after the conversation ends. A rejection that settles into the bones and refuses to leave. We know these experiences intimately, for they are woven into the fabric of human existence. No one escapes them. No one is immune. The question is never whether such moments will come, but what we will do when they arrive. Most surrender their peace, trading calm for chaos at the smallest provocation. Watch how quickly composure crumbles when offense is taken. Observe how readily we abandon our center when someone pushes against it. We give away what is most precious, our equilibrium, our clarity, our strength, in exchange for the momentary satisfaction of reaction. We match anger with anger, insult with insult, coldness with coldness, believing we are defending ourselves when in truth we are surrendering ourselves. Every time we allow another's behavior to dictate our own, we hand them a power they never earned and do not deserve. Power is found in the space between stimulus and response. This space is the most important territory you will ever inhabit. It may seem small, a fraction of a second, a single breath, a moment so brief it barely registers, but within this tiny interval lies everything that matters. Here is where reaction becomes response. Here is where instinct yields to intention. Here is where the animal gives way to the human. That space, however small, is where your destiny is shaped. Not in the grand decisions that come once a year, but in the countless small choices that come every day. The choice to pause before speaking, to breathe before acting, to consider before concluding. These choices, accumulated over time, determine who we become. It is not immune to the wind, but it does not allow the wind to decide what it becomes. This is the crucial distinction. The tree feels everything. It is not numb to the storm, not protected by some magical barrier that keeps the weather at bay. The wind touches every branch, shakes every leaf, tests every fiber of its being. But the wind does not transform the tree into something other than a tree. The storm does not have that power. Only the tree decides what the tree becomes. In life, your control begins when you choose your response, not in the absence of adversity, but in your mastery over it. We wait for circumstances to improve before we demonstrate our strength. We tell ourselves we will be calm when there is nothing to disturb us, patient when there is nothing to frustrate us, kind when there is nothing to provoke us. But this is not mastery. This is merely the absence of testing. True control reveals itself precisely when control is difficult, when provocation is present, when frustration is real, when every instinct urges us toward reaction rather than response. Quiet the mind, silence the world. Noise isn't just sound, it's every doubt, every worry, every useless thought swirling in your mind. We think of noise as something external, something that enters through the ears and disturbs from outside. But the loudest noise most of us will ever encounter comes from within. It is the endless commentary that runs beneath our waking hours. It is the voice that questions every decision, replays every mistake, anticipates every disaster. It is the restless churning that never stops, even when the world around us falls completely silent. This inner noise is more exhausting than any external clamor, more persistent than any sound that comes from outside ourselves. When left unchecked, this noise grows loud enough to drown out your own voice. There is a quieter voice beneath the noise, a voice of wisdom, of intuition, of knowing. This voice speaks truth. It offers guidance. It knows what matters and what does not, but it speaks softly, and the noise speaks loud. When we allow the mental chatter to run without interruption, without challenge, without conscious intervention, it grows until it fills every corner of awareness. The quiet voice cannot be heard. The truth it carries cannot reach us. We lose access to our own deepest knowing, buried beneath the avalanche of worry and doubt. The world outside grows more frantic every day, but those who can silence their minds command a power that nothing external can shake. Look around you. See how the pace accelerates, how the demands multiply, how the stimulation increases without end. The world asks more of our attention with each passing year. It offers more distractions, more concerns, more reasons to remain in a state of constant agitation. Those who cannot quiet themselves are swept along by this current, carried wherever the world's frenzy takes them. But those who have learned to still the inner noise stand apart. They move through the same world but are not moved by it. They encounter the same chaos but do not become chaotic. This is power, true power, unshakable power. When turmoil arises, resist the urge to join the clamor. This is the first and most essential discipline. Turmoil invites participation. It calls to something in us that wants to engage, to react, to match intensity with intensity. When the world grows loud, we feel we must grow loud as well. When others panic, we feel we must join the panic. But this urge can be resisted. It can be observed without being obeyed. The turmoil will be there whether we join it or not. Our participation adds nothing except the loss of our own peace. Step back. Create distance between yourself and the disturbance. Not physical distance necessarily, though sometimes this helps, but mental distance, emotional distance, the distance that allows observation rather than absorption. From this removed position, you can see clearly what immersion would obscure. Breathe until your thoughts settle like dust after a storm. The breath is your anchor to stillness. When the mind races, the breath can slow it. When thoughts scatter in all directions, the breath can gather them. Breathe consciously, deliberately, with attention to each inhale and exhale. Watch as the swirling chaos begins to settle. Like dust suspended in air after a great disturbance, your thoughts will eventually drift downward, come to rest, return to stillness. You cannot force this settling, but you can create the conditions for it. The breath creates those conditions. But the greatest transformation happens not by conquering the world, but by conquering the chaos within. This is the truth that changes everything. The battlefield that matters is internal. The victory that counts is won in the mind. When you conquer the inner chaos, the outer chaos loses its power over you. Not because it disappears, it does not, but because you are no longer at its mercy. You have found a refuge it cannot reach. Learn to listen for the silence beneath the surface. It is always there. Beneath the noise, beneath the chatter, beneath the endless stream of thought, silence waits. It is the ground on which all noise arises. It is the space in which all thoughts appear and disappear. This silence is not something you create. It is something you discover. It has been there all along, patient, unchanging, available to anyone willing to listen for it. Practice retreating to your inner quiet, even for a moment each time the world seems too loud. This is a practice which means it requires repetition. It means you will forget and need to remember. It means some days will be easier than others. But with practice, the retreat becomes faster, more reliable, more accessible. What once took hours can eventually be found in seconds. The inner quiet becomes a place you know well, a refuge you can reach whenever needed. In that stillness, find your strength. This is where strength lives, not in noise, not in activity, not in the frantic energy we mistake for power. True strength dwells in stillness. It arises from quiet. It is available to those who have learned to stop, to settle, to silence the inner clamor that exhausts without producing. Those who master their own minds carry an authority that cannot be taken. External authority can be stripped away, titles can be removed, possessions can be lost. But the authority that comes from mental mastery belongs to you entirely. No circumstance can confiscate it, no person can diminish it. It is yours because you have built it within yourself in the one territory that remains forever under your control. In silence, you become unbreakable. Not hard, not rigid, not armored against life, but unbreakable, flexible yet firm, yielding yet strong, able to meet whatever comes without being shattered by it. This is what silence offers. This is what the quiet mind provides. In the stillness you have cultivated, you find a strength that noise could never give you. And from that strength, you face the world not as its victim, but as its master. 3. Choose what deserves your energy. Every day, countless demands compete for your attention. They arrive from every direction, at every hour, in every form imaginable. Some announce themselves loudly, insisting on immediate response. Others slip in quietly, stealing focus before you realize it has been taken. The phone buzzes. The email arrives. The comment stings. The news alarms. Each demand presents itself as urgent, as worthy, as something that cannot be ignored. The sheer volume is overwhelming. A constant flood that never recedes, never pauses, never grants respite to those who do not actively claim it. Insults, petty arguments, fleeting dramas all tempt you to spend your energy recklessly. These are the thieves that rob us most completely, precisely because they seem so small. An insult lands, and we spend hours composing responses we will never deliver. A petty argument erupts, and we sacrifice our peace-defending positions that matter nothing in the larger arc of our lives. A fleeting drama unfolds someone else's crisis, someone else's conflict, and we pour ourselves into it as though it were our own. These temptations are everywhere, and they are relentless. They do not care about your goals. They do not consider your well-being. They only want your attention, your energy, your precious and irreplaceable life force. Most people scatter themselves thin, drained by battles that never should have been fought. Watch how quickly reserves are depleted when every provocation receives a response, when every slight demands retaliation, when every distraction is granted the attention it seeks. These people end their days exhausted, yet they cannot point to anything meaningful accomplished. They have been busy, tremendously busy, but the busyness produced nothing of value. They fought battles that left them wounded without winning anything worth having. They defended territory that held no strategic importance. They poured water into vessels full of holes, wondering why they remained forever empty. But real power lies in choosing your battles, in deciding what is truly worthy of your energy. This is the discipline that separates those who merely survive from those who thrive. It is not the absence of challenges that creates a powerful life. Challenges will always come. It is the wisdom to recognize which challenges deserve engagement and which deserve only indifference. Not every fight is your fight. Not every problem is your problem. Not every demand on your attention merits the attention it demands. Real power begins the moment you recognize this and start acting accordingly. Think of a fortress built high on a mountain. Picture it clearly, walls of stone rising from solid rock, towers watching over valleys below, gates strong enough to withstand any assault. This fortress has survived centuries not by fighting every enemy that approached, but by choosing which enemies to engage. Its gates are not open to every passing stranger. Only the worthy are allowed in. The fortress understands that its strength lies not only in its walls, but in its discernment. It does not exhaust its defenders against every wandering band of troublemakers. It conserves its resources for threats that truly matter. Most things do not. This is the liberating truth. The vast majority of what seeks your attention does not deserve it. The unkind word, it reveals more about the speaker than about you. The inconvenience, it will pass whether you rage against it or not. The passing annoyance, it is already passing. Why hold on to it? When you examine each demand honestly, you find that most can be released without loss. The loss comes only from engaging, from granting them the energy they sought but did not merit. To rise above the noise, develop a ruthless focus. The word ruthless matters here. Not cruel, not cold, but ruthless, without the weakness of constant accommodation, without the drain of perpetual distraction. This focus must be cultivated deliberately. It does not arise naturally in a world designed to scatter attention. It must be built through practice, through repeated decisions to ignore what does not matter, through the discipline of returning again and again to what does. Invest yourself only in what moves you forward: goals, values, principles. These are the worthy recipients of your energy. Your goals, the outcomes you are building toward, the future you are creating with each day's effort, your values, the standards you have chosen to live by, the commitments that define who you are, your principles, the foundations that do not shift regardless of circumstance. These deserve your investment. These will compound your energy into something meaningful. These will transform the finite resource of your attention into lasting achievement. The rest, let it drift by, untouched, unclaimed. Imagine standing in a river, water flowing constantly past you. Not every piece of debris that floats by requires your intervention. Not every current demands you swim against it. Most of what passes can simply pass. You do not need to grab it, examine it, respond to it. You can let it go, untouched by your hands, unclaimed by your attention. It will continue downstream regardless of your involvement. Your uninvolvement changes nothing about its journey and everything about your strength. Your energy is your most precious currency, more precious than money, for money can be earned again while energy spent is gone forever. More precious than time, for time without energy is merely duration without life. This currency is what you spend to build anything of value. It is what you invest in relationships, in work, in growth, in all the things that make existence meaningful. Guard it accordingly. Budget it wisely. Refuse to squander it on purchases that return nothing. Your greatness is determined by your ability to ignore them. Not to fight them. Fighting is just another form of engagement. Not to resent them. Resentment is energy spent on what does not deserve it. But to ignore them. To let them exist without granting them space within your walls. To acknowledge their presence without allowing them entrance. In this ability lies your freedom. In this discipline lies your power. In this choice made again and again, in moment after moment, lies the path to everything you are capable of becoming. Let go of needing approval. Seeking approval is a silent prison. Its bars are invisible, its walls undetectable to the casual observer. From the outside, the prisoner appears free, walking, talking, moving through the world like anyone else. But inside, the confinement is absolute. Every decision passes through a filter. What will they think? Every word is weighed against an imagined audience. Every action is measured not by its truth, but by its reception. This prison requires no guards because the prisoner guards themselves, constantly monitoring, constantly adjusting, constantly shrinking to fit expectations that may not even exist. Every time you wait for a nod, a compliment, or a sign that you belong, you place your self-worth in someone else's hands. Consider what this means. Your sense of value, the most fundamental perception you have of yourself, becomes dependent on external delivery. You cannot feel worthy until someone confirms your worth. You cannot feel acceptable until someone signals acceptance. You have handed the keys to your inner peace to people who may not even know they hold them, who may be careless with what you have entrusted, who may never return what you have given away. The chains tighten, and soon you find yourself living for others, shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. This happens gradually, so gradually that you may not notice until the confinement is complete. A small adjustment here to avoid disapproval, a minor compromise there to secure acceptance, opinions held back because they might not be popular, truths left unspoken because they might cause friction. Piece by piece, you disappear. What remains is not you, but a carefully constructed performance designed to please audiences who are themselves performing for other audiences, all of them trapped in the same silent prison. But the rarest individuals in history, the ones who stand tall through time, never live by consensus. Search the records of human achievement. Examine the lives of those whose names have survived centuries. You will find a common thread: independence from the opinions of others. These were not people who polled their neighbors before taking action. They did not consult focus groups before speaking truth. They did not adjust their convictions to match the comfort of their contemporaries. They did not bend for applause or cower before criticism. Applause came for some of them eventually, but it was never the goal, never the motivation, never the measure by which they judged their own actions. And criticism came for all of them, often fierce, often sustained, often from those who should have known better. But the criticism did not penetrate. It could not touch what it was not permitted to reach. They had built something within themselves that external opinion could not alter. They were driven by something deeper, a conviction that needed no audience. This is the secret source of their power. Not talent alone, for many talented people have disappeared into the approval of their time, never to be remembered. Not opportunity alone, for many with opportunity have wasted it seeking the validation of others. But conviction, deep, unwavering, self-sustaining conviction that burned regardless of who was watching, regardless of who approved, regardless of who understood. If you allow others to shape your sense of value, your happiness will rise and fall with every passing opinion. Imagine living this way, and perhaps you do not need to imagine. A kind word lifts you to the heights. A cold glance plunges you to the depths. A compliment makes the day bright. A criticism makes the night dark. You become a leaf blown by winds you cannot control, moving in whatever direction the current approval happens to push. There is no stability in this existence. There is no peace. There is only the endless oscillation between elation and despair, determined entirely by forces outside yourself. The cure is to build an inner foundation so strong, so sure, that it cannot be shaken by praise or blame. This foundation is not built overnight. It is constructed through countless decisions to value your own judgment. It is strengthened through repeated refusals to abandon your truth for the comfort of agreement. It is deepened through the daily practice of asking what is right rather than what is popular. This foundation becomes your home, a place within yourself where you can stand regardless of the weather outside, regardless of the opinions swirling around you. When you stop needing approval, you begin to live for truth rather than applause. This is a profound transformation. The questions you ask yourself change. Instead of wondering whether others will approve, you ask whether you approve. Instead of calculating reception, you calculate rightness. Instead of performing for an audience, you simply exist authentically in alignment with what you actually believe. The relief of this shift is immeasurable. The freedom it provides is beyond description. Release the urge to be liked. This urge runs deep. It has roots in childhood, in the genuine need for acceptance that all young beings share. But what was appropriate for the child becomes a prison for the adult. The urge can be released. It can be observed, understood, and gradually loosened. Not by fighting it directly, but by building something stronger in its place, a relationship with yourself that no longer requires external confirmation. Stand tall, even if you stand alone. This may be the hardest instruction to follow, for we are social creatures, and standing alone runs against deep instincts. But standing alone is not the same as being alone. It is simply the willingness to maintain your position regardless of who joins you there. Often, you will find that when you stand tall alone, others gather around you. They recognize something in your independence that they wish they possessed. Your solitary stand becomes a beacon. The moment you do, you'll discover a freedom that cannot be stolen, a freedom that makes you formidable. This freedom is unlike any other. It does not depend on circumstance. It cannot be confiscated by authority. It cannot be diminished by opinion. It exists entirely within you, in the space you have created by releasing the need for approval, and it makes you powerful in ways that those still seeking approval cannot understand and cannot overcome. Unseen strength in stillness. When chaos erupts, most rush to fix, to argue, to defend. This is the instinct that rises unbidden when turbulence arrives. Something threatens, and hands reach out to wrestle it into submission. Something challenges, and voices raise to meet the challenge with equal volume. Something attacks, and defenses mobilize before thought has a chance to intervene. The rushing feels necessary, feels urgent, feels like the only possible response to circumstances that seem to demand immediate action. We move because movement feels like power. We speak because speech feels like strength. We fight because fighting feels like the only alternative to defeat. They mistake motion for strength. This is one of the most pervasive errors in human understanding. We have been taught that power looks like action, that strength manifests as force, that capability must announce itself through visible effort, The still figure seems weak to us. The quiet presence seems passive. The unmoving center seems ineffective. But this reading is backward. It confuses the appearance of strength with strength itself. It mistakes the symptoms we expect for the substance we need. But stillness is where true power hides. Not in the clamor, not in the rush, not in the frantic activity that exhausts without accomplishing. True power resides in the space of non-reaction, in the pause that most people cannot hold, in the composure that seems impossible when everything around you screams for response. This power is hidden precisely because it does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It does not make noise. Those looking for strength in obvious places will never find it here. But those who have learned to look deeper will recognize it immediately. Find this stillness, and you will find a strength greater than any fury around you. The stillness is not something you create from nothing. It exists already within you, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be claimed. The chaos around you may seem overwhelming. The fury may appear unstoppable. The storm may look as though it will sweep away everything in its path. But there is a center within you that no storm can reach if you can find it, if you can remain there, if you can resist the urge to abandon it and join the chaos. When faced with provocation, you choose to wait. The provocation may be sharp, may be personal, may strike at precisely the places where you are most vulnerable. Every instinct may urge immediate response. Every impulse may demand retaliation. But you can choose to wait. You can let the provocation land without immediately generating reaction. In that waiting, something remarkable happens. The urgency fades. The necessity of response reveals itself as illusion. The provocation loses its power over you because you have refused to grant it power. The world expects you to react, to lash out, to break. These expectations are built into every provocation, every challenge, every attempt to destabilize your center. Those who challenge you are counting on reaction. They have prepared for your defense. They are ready for your counterattack. Their strategy depends on your predictability, on your willingness to follow the script they have written. But when you hold your ground in silence, others are forced to reveal themselves. Their preparation becomes useless. Their strategy collapses. They must continue without the reaction they expected. And in that continuation, they show what they truly are. They expose themselves in ways they never intended. In that space, you gather clarity, you keep your advantage, and you remain unbroken. The space of stillness is not empty. It is full of perception. While others exhaust themselves in reaction, you observe. While others scatter their attention across defense and attack, you concentrate yours. While others break themselves against what they cannot control, you remain whole. The advantage accumulates with every moment you hold your stillness. The clarity deepens with every breath you take before responding. Most people never experience this strength. They cannot hold the pause long enough to discover what lives within it. They are pulled by every emotion, every demand, every urge to defend. The pulling is constant, relentless, wearing down resistance until reaction becomes automatic, until response is instantaneous, until the space between stimulus and action disappears entirely. These people are not weak by nature. They simply have never learned that the pulling can be resisted, that the urges can be observed without being obeyed, that a different way of being is possible. But those who practice stillness rule themselves. This is sovereignty in its truest form, not control over others, not dominion over circumstances, but mastery over oneself. The person who can remain still when everything urges movement has achieved something rare and precious. They have become the ruler of the only territory that was ever truly theirs to rule. They become a force others cannot predict, cannot control, cannot defeat. Predictability is vulnerability. When others know how you will respond, they can prepare for your response, can manipulate your response, can use your response against you. But the still person is unpredictable. They do not react according to the expected script. They do not provide the responses that others are counting on. This unpredictability makes them formidable. You cannot defeat what you cannot anticipate. You cannot control what you cannot provoke. You cannot conquer what refuses to engage on your terms. Your unseen power lies in your quiet resolve. It is unseen because it does not advertise itself. It is power because it accomplishes what all the noise and haste cannot. It lies in quiet because quiet is where it dwells, where it grows, where it becomes unshakable. And it is resolve, not passive acceptance, not defeated resignation, but active determination expressed through stillness rather than motion. This is your strength. This is your advantage. This is the force that will carry you through chaos while others are torn apart by it, detached from other people's drama. Everywhere you go, people invite you into their storms, arguments, grievances, gossip, chaos. The invitations arrive constantly from every direction, in every setting. A colleague pulls you aside to share their outrage about an injustice you never witnessed. A family member calls to rehearse the same complaint they have voiced 100 times before. A friend presents their conflict and waits for you to choose sides. The invitations are persistent, often disguised as requests for support or connection. But make no mistake about what they truly are. Invitations to abandon your peace and enter turbulence that is not your own. The temptation to join is strong. We are social creatures, wired for connection, drawn to participate in the emotional lives of those around us. When someone offers their storm, something in us wants to accept. It feels like caring. It feels like loyalty. It feels like what a good person would do. To refuse seems cold, seems selfish, seems like abandonment of those who need us. The temptation pulls with considerable force, and most people yield to it without even recognizing they had a choice. But every time you let someone else's storm inside your mind, you lose your center. This is the cost that goes unnoticed until the damage is done. The storm enters, and suddenly your thoughts are no longer your own. Your emotions are no longer responding to your life, but to someone else's narrative. Your energy is no longer directed towards your purposes, but scattered across conflicts you did not create. The center that held you steady begins to drift. The clarity that guided you begins to cloud. You have paid a price you never agreed to pay. You start fighting battles that aren't yours, carrying burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. Consider how exhausting this is. Your own life presents sufficient challenges, sufficient demands, sufficient weight to carry. But when you absorb the dramas of others, you multiply your burdens beyond what any person can sustainably bear. You find yourself angry about situations you cannot change, worried about outcomes you cannot influence, drained by conflicts you cannot resolve. These battles consume your resources while yielding nothing of value. These burdens break your back while serving no purpose. Detachment isn't cruelty, it is wisdom. The world has confused these two, and the confusion costs us dearly. We believe that to care means to absorb, that to love means to suffer alongside, that to be good means to take on every burden presented to us. But this belief serves no one, not us, not those we think we are helping. Our suffering does not reduce theirs. Our drowning does not help them swim. Wisdom recognizes the difference between compassion and absorption, between caring and carrying, between presence and participation in chaos. It's the art of letting people spin in their own chaos while you remain anchored in your peace. Notice that this is called an art. It requires practice, refinement, conscious development. It is not natural to most of us, not automatic, not something we achieve once and maintain forever. The art must be cultivated through repeated choice, through constant remembering, through the discipline of returning again and again to our own center when the pull of other storms threatens to drag us away. Imagine standing on the shore while waves crash all around you. Picture this scene clearly. The ocean churns with fury. Waves rise and fall with tremendous force. The water is wild, dangerous, capable of pulling under anyone who ventures too deep. You stand at the edge, feet on solid ground, watching the spectacle unfold before you. The power of the sea is undeniable. The drama of the waves is compelling. Everything seems to demand that you enter, that you engage, that you throw yourself into the tumult. You do not have to drown. This is the truth that changes everything. The waves will crash whether you drown in them or not. The ocean will churn whether you are swept away or remain standing. Your drowning adds nothing to the scene except your own destruction. It saves no one. It calms no storm. It only removes you from the shore where you could have remained useful, observant, alive. You can watch, understand, even help if you choose. Detachment does not mean blindness. It does not mean ignorance of suffering or indifference to struggle. You can see clearly from the shore. You can understand what is happening in the waves. You can even offer help, a rope thrown to someone struggling, a word of guidance called across the water, a steady presence that serves as reference point for those lost in the chaos. Help given from solid ground is far more effective than help attempted while drowning yourself. Practice stepping back. This stepping back is physical, mental, emotional. It is the creation of distance between yourself and the storm being offered to you. It is the refusal to merge your nervous system with someone else's agitation. It is the conscious choice to remain where you are rather than being pulled where you do not belong. This practice must become habit, must become reflex, must become so deeply embedded that it operates even when the pull is strong. When drawn into drama, ask, is this mine to solve? Most times, honest reflection will reveal that it is not. The drama belongs to someone else. The problem is theirs to work through. The conflict is theirs to resolve. You have been invited to participate, but participation is not required. You can decline the invitation. You can return it unopened. You can acknowledge it and still choose to remain on your own ground. Let others keep their storms. They are entitled to them. They are free to spin in their chaos for as long as they choose. This is their right, their path, their journey to walk. You do not need to join them on it. You do not need to carry their weather inside your own sky. You keep your calm, guard it carefully, return to it constantly. Let it be the ground on which you stand while the waves crash around you, the shore from which you watch the storms pass, the center that nothing external can move. This calm is yours. It belongs to no one else's drama. Keep it that way. Turn insults into air. Words are sharp. They travel across space and time, carrying intentions both noble and destructive. They can build bridges between souls or tear down the strongest walls. We underestimate their power because they are invisible, because they leave no visible wound, because they seem to disappear the moment they are spoken. But words lodge themselves in memory. They echo in quiet moments. They surface when we least expect them, years after they were first uttered. Some are aimed straight for the heart. These are the words chosen with precision, crafted to cause maximum damage, delivered with a specific intent to wound. The speaker knows where you are vulnerable. They have studied your weaknesses, perhaps without even realizing they were studying. And when the moment comes, they release their words like arrows, finding the exact place where protection is thinnest, where the wound will hurt most deeply. Most people collect these insults, wear them as scars, and let them dictate their worth. This collection happens automatically without conscious decision. An insult lands, and we gather it up, examine it, turn it over in our minds. We store it alongside other insults, building an archive of wounds. We return to this collection often, reviewing the evidence of our inadequacy, reminding ourselves of every harsh judgment ever pronounced against us. The scars become our identity. The insults become our truth. We allow words spoken in moments of anger or cruelty to define who we believe ourselves to be. But insults only cut as deep as you let them. This is the truth that changes everything when truly understood. The insult has no inherent power. It is only sound, only vibration, only arrangement of syllables that mean nothing until we assign them meaning. The depth of the cut is determined not by the sharpness of the words, but by the permission we grant them to penetrate. We hold the power we have been giving away. We have always held it, even when we did not know. To the strong, an insult is nothing but wind, unfelt, unheard, unfelt. Watch those who have achieved this mastery. Insults reach them and simply pass through, leaving no trace, causing no disruption. They do not flinch. They do not defend. They do not collect the words for later examination. The wind blows, and they remain unchanged, as steady after the gust as they were before it arrived. This is not pretense. This is not suppression. This is genuine imperviousness built through understanding and practice. Imagine walking through a crowded square. Picture it vividly, the press of bodies, the chaos of movement, the countless faces passing in every direction. This square represents life itself, full of others, full of voices, full of opinions about who you are and what you deserve. You cannot avoid the square. You must walk through it. The only question is how you will make the crossing. Voices call out, some kind, some cruel. The kind voices offer encouragement, appreciation, recognition. The cruel voices offer criticism, judgment, condemnation. Both kinds reach your ears. Both kinds seek your attention. Both kinds want something from you, your response, your emotion, your engagement. The square is never silent. The voices never stop. This is the nature of moving through a world full of others who are themselves moving, speaking, judging, calling out. Or you could keep walking untouched, as if the words were nothing but air. This is the alternative that most never discover. The words reach you, you cannot prevent this. But reaching is not the same as landing. The words touch your ears and continue on their way, carrying their poison past you to dissipate in empty space. You keep walking. Your pace does not change. Your direction does not alter. The crossing completes itself while others remain trapped in endless defense. This is not about pretending words don't hurt. Let us be clear about what is being offered here. This is not denial. This is not the forced smile that hides genuine pain. This is not the claim that insults bounce off naturally, automatically, without effort. Words can hurt. They do hurt, especially when we have not yet developed the capacity to let them pass. It's about recognizing your power to decide what matters. The recognition is what transforms everything. Before recognition, we are victims of every word that reaches us. After recognition, we become architects of our own experience. We see that we have been granting authority to voices that had no right to it. We see that we have been accepting judgments we never needed to accept. We see that the power was always ours, waiting to be claimed. With it briefly and return to stillness when it passes. They are unchanged by the wind's passage. They remain what they were before. Be like the leaves, let the wind blow through. Return to your stillness. Remember, only what you hold on to can ever weigh you down. The insult has no weight of its own. It becomes heavy only when you grasp it, carry it, refuse to release it. The burden is not in the word, but in the holding. Let go, and the weight disappears. Let go, and you walk freely through the crowded square, untouched by voices that have no power over those wise enough to turn insults into air. Master calm when others lose control. Moments of crisis expose true character. When the pressure mounts and the stakes rise, the masks we wear in ordinary times fall away. What remains is what we truly are, not what we pretend to be when conditions are easy, not what we aspire to become in some imagined future, but what we have actually built within ourselves through years of choice and practice. Crisis does not create character. It reveals it. The person who emerges in moments of extremity has been forming all along, in countless small decisions that seemed insignificant at the time. When tempers flare and chaos reigns, most people lose themselves in the fire. Watch what happens when tension erupts. See how quickly composure crumbles, how rapidly the veneer of civilization dissolves, how easily people abandon the principles they claim to hold. The fire spreads from person to person, each one catching the flame from the one beside them, until entire rooms, entire organizations, entire communities are consumed by heat they cannot control. The losing of self happens so fast that most do not even recognize it occurring. One moment they are themselves. The next moment they are something else entirely, something shaped by circumstance rather than conviction. They become what the world throws at them, angry, desperate, reckless. The transformation is complete and instantaneous. An angry word arrives, and they become anger. A desperate situation presents itself, and they become desperation. A reckless option appears, and they become recklessness. There is no space between the stimulus and the response, no moment of choice, no exercise of will. The world throws, and they catch, and they become whatever they have caught. They have no center strong enough to resist the force of external events. They are leaves in a wind they cannot control, blown in whatever direction the gust demands. But those who master calm can walk through fire and emerge unburned. These are the rare ones, the ones who have built something within themselves that circumstance cannot touch. They enter the same fires that consume others, face the same heat, encounter the same conditions that destroy those around them, but they emerge unchanged. The fire has passed over them without finding fuel. The heat has surrounded them without penetrating to their core. They walk out the other side as themselves, carrying no burns, bearing no scars from the passage through flames. Calm is not weakness. This confusion must be addressed directly, for it keeps many from pursuing the mastery they need. We have been taught that strength looks like intensity, that power expresses itself through force, that the calm person is somehow less than the agitated one. But this teaching is backwards. Intensity is often the mask worn by those who have lost control. Force is frequently the resort of those who have no other option. The agitated person is not displaying strength, but demonstrating its absence. It is the highest strength. Nothing requires more power than maintaining stillness when everything urges movement, keeping quiet when everything demands noise, remaining centered when everything pushes toward the edges. The strength required for this mastery exceeds any strength required for mere reaction. Reaction is easy. It is automatic. It requires nothing but surrender to impulse. But calm in chaos, this requires everything. When everyone else is ruled by panic, you become the anchor. Consider what an anchor does. It holds steady while waters churn. It provides a fixed point around which everything else can organize. Without the anchor, the ship is at the mercy of waves, carried wherever the current dictates, smashed against whatever rocks lie in its path. With the anchor, stability becomes possible. Direction becomes achievable. Survival becomes likely. When you master calm, you become this for yourself and for others. You become the point of reference in a world that has lost its bearing. The world spins wildly, but at your center, all is quiet. You do not deny the spinning. You do not pretend the wild does not exist. The hurricane is real. The chaos is genuine. The destruction happening at the edges is not imagined. But at your center, the center you have built through practice and choice, quiet remains. This quiet is not the absence of awareness. It is the presence of mastery. You know what is happening around you. You simply do not allow it to happen within you. You will remain steady and unbroken, guiding yourself and others through the storm. This is your destiny when calm is mastered. Not merely surviving the storm, but remaining whole within it. Not merely enduring, but guiding, providing direction when direction is lost, offering steadiness when steadiness has disappeared, demonstrating what is possible when someone refuses to abandon themselves to circumstance. Others will orient themselves around your stillness. They will find their way by reference to your calm. Your mastery becomes their lighthouse. Each time you practice this, each time you breathe, wait, and act from calm, you build a reputation for strength that cannot be bought or faked. This reputation is not constructed from claims or appearances. It is built from repeated demonstration, from consistent evidence, from the accumulated proof of countless moments when calm was chosen over chaos. No amount of money can purchase this reputation. No amount of pretense can simulate it. It can only be earned through practice, through the actual mastery of actual calm in actual moments of crisis. Each breath taken consciously, each pause held deliberately, each action chosen from stillness rather than reaction, these are the building blocks of a strength that becomes undeniable, a reputation that speaks for itself, a mastery that transforms not only how others see you, but who you actually are. Protect your peace at all costs. In a world that feeds on chaos, your peace is sacred. Consider what surrounds you, the constant noise, the unending demands, the perpetual urgency that insists everything matters equally, that every crisis deserves your full attention, that every request warrants your immediate response. The world has developed an appetite for disruption. It consumes tranquility and produces agitation. It takes the calm you have built and converts it into fuel for its own restless engine. In this environment, peace is not merely valuable. It is sacred, set apart, worthy of reverence, deserving of protection that matches its importance. It is your shelter, your power, your truest possession. When the storms of life arrive, and they always arrive, peace is the shelter that keeps you dry. When challenges demand response, peace is the power that enables wise action. When everything external can be taken away, peace remains the possession that no circumstance can confiscate. Your peace is not a luxury to be enjoyed when conditions permit. It is the foundation upon which everything else depends. Without it, shelter becomes a prison, power becomes exhaustion, and possessions become burdens. With it, even difficulty becomes manageable, even challenge becomes opportunity. But peace is not given. It is guarded fiercely, faithfully, and without apology. No one will hand you peace. No circumstance will deliver it to your door wrapped and ready. The world does not offer peace. It offers only the conditions in which peace might be possible if you are vigilant enough to protect it. This guarding must be fierce, not passive, not half-hearted, not occasionally when convenient. The threats to your peace are fierce, and your defense must match them. The guarding must be faithful, not abandoned when times are easy, not forgotten when nothing seems threatening, but constant, reliable, unwavering. And the guarding must be without apology offered, without excuse, without justification, without the need to explain yourself to those who would prefer you remain vulnerable. Most people allow their peace to be stolen by the demands of others, the drama of the day, the endless noise. Watch how easily peace departs when someone makes a request. See how quickly calm evaporates when conflict arises. Notice how readily tranquility dissolves when the day brings its inevitable complications. The theft happens without violence, without obvious crime, without any awareness that something precious has been taken. The demands arrive dressed as obligation. The drama presents itself as importance. The noise claims to be information you cannot live without. And piece by piece, moment by moment, your peace is carried away by thieves who do not even know they are stealing. They become anxious, drained, and bitter, wondering why life feels so heavy. This is the cost of unguarded peace. Anxiety settles in where calm once lived. Exhaustion occupies the space that energy once filled. Bitterness takes root in the garden that joy once tended. These people look at their lives and cannot understand the weight they carry. They work harder, push longer, try more desperately to find what keeps eluding them. But the solution is not more effort. The solution is better protection. The heaviness comes not from the demands of life, but from the surrender of peace to those demands. But those who protect their peace refuse to barter it for anything less than purpose. This is the distinction that separates those who thrive from those who merely survive. The protectors of peace are not immune to demands. They face the same pressures, encounter the same requests, navigate the same complications as everyone else, but they have learned what is worth trading their peace for and what is not. They barter their peace for purpose, for what truly matters, for what aligns with their deepest values, for what deserves the sacrifice. Everything else is refused. Everything else is met with a closed door, a firm boundary, a clear no. Set clear boundaries. Boundaries of the walls that surround your peace, the lines that mark where your territory ends and others' territory begins. Without clear boundaries, invasion is constant. Others will wander into your peace without realizing they are trespassing. They will take what they need without recognizing they are stealing. The boundaries must be clear, not vague, not shifting, not dependent on your mood or their persistence. Clear boundaries can be understood. Clear boundaries can be respected. Clear boundaries can be defended. Say no without guilt. The word no is the guardian of peace. It stands at the gate and determines what enters. But guilt often disarms this guardian, convincing us that we have no right to refuse, that saying no makes us selfish, that we owe our peace to whoever asks for it. This guilt is a lie. You do not owe your peace to anyone. Your peace is yours, earned through discipline, built through practice, maintained through vigilance. Saying no to what would steal it is not selfishness. It is sanity. It is survival. It is the necessary act of preservation without which nothing else is possible. Retreat when you must. There is no shame in withdrawal. There is no weakness in stepping back. When the threats to your peace become too numerous, when the demands become too intense, when the noise becomes too loud, retreat is wisdom. Retreat is not surrender. It is strategic repositioning. It is the recognition that some battles cannot be won in their current location and must be abandoned in favor of ground that can be defended. Know when to retreat and do so without hesitation. Never apologize for preserving your energy. Your energy is the currency with which peace is purchased and maintained. When you preserve it, you preserve everything. When you spend it recklessly, you impoverish yourself in ways that money cannot measure. The preservation of energy requires no apology, no explanation, no justification to those who would prefer you exhaust yourself meeting their needs. You owe them nothing. You owe yourself everything. It is the reward of the disciplined mind, the soul that chooses itself over the chaos of the crowd. Peace does not come to the undisciplined. It cannot. The undisciplined mind is open to every invasion, vulnerable to every theft, defenseless against every demand. Only the disciplined mind can build the walls, maintain the vigilance, and exercise the consistent choice that peace requires. And this discipline expresses itself ultimately as a choice, the choice of self over crowd, of center over chaos, of what you need over what others want from you. Let your peace be the immovable center of your life. Everything else can move. Circumstances can shift. Relationships can change. Opportunities can come and go. But your peace remains where it is fixed, stable, the point around which everything else organizes itself. When peace is the center, life has structure. When peace is the center, decisions have clarity. When peace is the center, challenges can be faced without the fear that facing them will destroy you. See setbacks as small stones. Every journey has its obstacles, stumbles, delays, defeats. This is not misfortune unique to you. This is the nature of all journeys, all paths, all attempts to move from where you are to where you wish to be. The obstacles do not appear because you have chosen wrongly or because the universe conspires against you. They appear because they are part of what journeys are. No path worth traveling is smooth from beginning to end. No destination worth reaching is accessed without difficulty along the way. The stumbles come. The delays arrive. The defeats present themselves. This is simply what it means to be moving forward. Most see these as proof that they're not enough. When the stumble happens, when the delay extends, when the defeat lands its blow, something inside whispers the cruelest interpretation. You are inadequate. You were never meant for this. Others could succeed where you have failed. This voice speaks with such authority that we believe it must be telling the truth. We accept its verdict without questioning its credentials. We allow a temporary setback to become a permanent judgment about our worth, our capability, our right to continue pursuing what we set out to achieve. They become discouraged, give up, and let setbacks define their story. The discouragement settles in like a fog, obscuring the path that was visible just moments before. The giving up follows sometimes dramatically, sometimes as a quiet withdrawal that even the person experiencing it does not fully recognize. And then the story gets written, but not by them. The setback takes the pen and writes the narrative. What could have been a chapter about resilience becomes an ending about defeat. What could have been a paragraph about learning becomes the final word about failure. The story belongs to whoever holds the pen, and most people hand it to their setbacks without realizing they had any choice. But setbacks are not boulders meant to crush you. This is the misperception that causes so much unnecessary suffering. We encounter difficulty and imagine it as something enormous, something immovable, something designed specifically for our destruction. We see the boulder in our path and conclude that passage is impossible, that we must turn back, that the journey has been ended by forces too large to overcome. But this perception is distorted by the closeness of the encounter. What seems crushing in the moment rarely proves to be so when viewed from any distance. They are small stones on the path meant to teach you to step higher, reframe what you encounter. The obstacle that seems so large is actually small, not insignificant, not nothing, but small enough to step over, to learn from, to use as instruction for what comes next. These stones teach. They teach where the footing is unstable. They teach where attention must be sharpened. They teach how to lift your feet higher, how to place them more carefully, how to navigate terrain that requires more than automatic walking. The teaching is the purpose. The stepping higher is the gift. The greatest among us treat setbacks as feedback. Study those who have achieved what you aspire to achieve. Examine their histories. You will find not the absence of setbacks, but a different relationship with them. Where others see condemnation, they see information. Where others hear judgment, they hear instruction. The setback arrives, and instead of collapsing beneath it, they extract its lesson. They ask what it has to teach. They treat it as feedback from a reality that is trying to help them adjust their approach. A stumble is not the end. It's a lesson, a signal to adjust, to strengthen, to move forward wiser than before. The stumble contains within it everything you need to stumble less in the future. It shows you where your balance was off, where your attention wandered, where your preparation was insufficient. This information is valuable beyond measure. It costs you only the temporary pain of the stumble itself, and it pays dividends for every step you take afterward. To treat the stumble as an ending is to refuse the very gift it offers. Each challenge faced is a chisel shaping your will, your character, your resolve. The sculptor does not resent the chisel for striking the stone. The sculptor understands that striking is how the form is revealed, how the unnecessary is removed, how the shape hidden within the raw material finally emerges. You are both stone and sculptor. The challenges are chisels. Each strike removes something that was not essential to what you are becoming. Each blow reveals more of the will you are developing, the character you are forming, the resolve you are strengthening. The shaping requires impact. There is no other way. Imagine a traveler crossing a river, stone by stone. See this scene clearly. The river flows, constant and indifferent. The traveler stands at one bank, needing to reach the other. There is no bridge, no boat, no easy passage. There are only stones, some large, some small, some stable, some treacherous, scattered across the water. The crossing must happen one stone at a time. There is no other way to reach the opposite shore. Some stones slip, some are unsteady, but the crossing continues. The traveler places a foot and the stone holds. Another step and the stone shifts unexpectedly, balance wavers. Perhaps a foot gets wet, perhaps the traveler nearly falls, but the crossing continues. The next stone is found, the next step is taken. The unsteadiness of one stone does not end the journey. It merely becomes part of the journey, one moment among many, one challenge among the countless challenges that any river crossing contains. Each step builds confidence. Not confidence that every stone will be stable. This would be foolishness, denial of obvious reality. But confidence that unstable stones can be navigated. Confidence that slipping is not falling. Confidence that the crossing can be completed, even though not every step will be perfect. This confidence accumulates with each stone passed, each challenge met, each setback survived. Over time, setbacks become less frightening, less defining. What once seemed catastrophic now seems ordinary. What once threatened to end the journey now appears as simply another stone in the river to be stepped on, learned from, and passed. The setbacks have not changed. Their nature remains what it always was. But your relationship with them has transformed. They are less frightening because you have faced them before and survived. They are less defining because you have refused to let them write your story. They are just part of the crossing, nothing more, nothing less. Not signs that you should not be crossing, not evidence that the other bank is not for you, not proof that you are inadequate for the journey, just part of it, just stones in water, just the normal, expected, unavoidable features of any meaningful passage from one place to another. The world will always test you. This will not change. The tests will not cease because you have passed a certain number. They will not diminish because you have grown weary of them. The world tests because testing is what the world does to everyone who moves through it with intention. Accept this as simply true. Never argue with reality. So much of suffering is born from resistance, from wishing the world would bend to your will, from refusing to accept what is. This is the hidden source of anguish that most never identify. We believe our pain comes from circumstances, from what has happened to us, from the unfairness of events beyond our control. But look closer. Beneath the obvious difficulty lies a deeper wound, self-inflicted and constantly reopened. It is the wound of resistance, the exhausting insistence that things should be other than they are, the refusal to let what has happened simply be what has happened. Most people exhaust themselves fighting against facts, cursing circumstances, raging against the inevitable. Watch how energy is spent in this futile campaign. The fact is established, something has occurred, something exists, something has become true. Yet instead of accepting this truth and moving forward, we declare war against it. We argue with history. We debate with outcomes that are already determined. We rage against doors that have already closed, against paths that have already ended, against opportunities that have already passed. This fighting produces nothing except the exhaustion of the fighter. The facts remain unmoved. The circumstances do not change because we curse them. The inevitable arrives regardless of our rage. But reality is unmoved by our protests. This is perhaps the hardest truth to accept, precisely because it means our protests accomplish nothing. We want to believe that our anger matters, that our resistance has power, that if we refuse loudly enough and long enough, reality will somehow yield. But it does not yield. It cannot yield. Reality is simply what is indifferent to our opinions of it, unchanged by our arguments against it, continuing on its course, whether we accept it gracefully or fight it bitterly to the end. Wisdom is surrendering to what cannot be changed, and then acting powerfully within what remains. This surrender is not defeat. It is recognition of where power actually resides. The wise understand that certain things lie beyond their influence, what has already happened, what others choose to do, what circumstances have already determined. Against these, struggle is pointless. But within the space that remains, within the realm of response, of attitude, of next action, power is real and available. The wise conserve their energy by releasing what they cannot change, and they deploy that conserved energy toward what they can actually affect. Do not argue with what is. The argument cannot be won. Every moment spent in this futile debate is a moment stolen from meaningful action. Every ounce of energy invested in protesting reality is an ounce unavailable for changing what remains changeable. The argument with what is has only one possible outcome. You lose, and you lose exhausted. Save your strength for what can be changed, for where your influence counts. There are always things that can be changed. There are always places where your effort matters, where your attention yields results, where your action produces difference. But these places become invisible when you are consumed by argument with the unchangeable. Your strength, which is finite and precious, deserves better investment. It deserves to be spent where spending it accomplishes something. It deserves to be directed toward the changeable rather than wasted on the fixed. Accepting reality does not mean giving up. It means starting from the ground you actually stand on, not from where you wish you were. This distinction is crucial. Acceptance is so often confused with resignation, with surrender, with the abandonment of hope. But acceptance is none of these things. Acceptance is simply acknowledgement of where you are. It is the recognition that this moment, these circumstances, this situation is your starting point. You may wish you were somewhere else. You may prefer different ground beneath your feet. But wishing and preferring do not relocate you. Only accepting where you actually stand allows you to begin the journey to somewhere else. From that firm ground, all change is possible. Notice what acceptance provides. When you stop arguing with where you are, when you stop insisting that your starting point should be different, you gain something invaluable, firm ground. You have a foundation from which to move. You have a clear view of what actually needs to be addressed. You have the stability that comes from standing on what is real rather than balancing on what you wish were real. From this firm ground, and only from this ground, change becomes possible. All progress requires knowing where you begin. All movement requires acknowledging your current location. From that acceptance, all progress begins. Progress cannot begin from denial. It cannot begin from argument with facts. It cannot begin while you are still insisting that your starting point is wrong, that your circumstances should be different, that the ground beneath your feet should be other than it is. Progress begins in the moment of acceptance, in the instant when you stop fighting against what is and turn your attention toward what might be. This is not the end of effort, but the beginning of effective effort. This is not the death of hope, but the birth of realistic hope. When you stop arguing with life, you free yourself from bitterness and regret. Consider what bitterness actually is: the ongoing argument with something that has already happened, the perpetual protest against an outcome already determined. And what is regret but the same argument extended backward in time, the insistence that the past should have been different? When you stop arguing, when you accept what is and what was, both bitterness and regret lose their foundation. They cannot survive in a mind that has made peace with reality. You gain clarity, focus, and the ability to adapt. These are the fruits of acceptance. Clarity emerges when the fog of resistance dissipates. You see clearly because you are no longer distorting your vision with wishes about how things should look different. Focus becomes possible when energy is no longer scattered across futile battles with the unchangeable. All your attention can be directed toward what matters. An adaptation, that essential skill for navigating a constantly changing world, requires first acknowledging what has changed. You cannot adapt to a reality you refuse to accept. This is how you move forward, not by cursing the rain, but by learning how to walk in it. The rain will fall. This is beyond your control. You can stand in the downpour and rage against the sky, demanding that the clouds disperse, insisting that you should not be wet, arguing with the weather as though the weather might eventually agree with you. Or you can accept that rain is falling and ask yourself how to continue your journey despite it. You can learn to walk in rain. You can find shelter when necessary. You can adjust your plans, your pace, your expectations to account for conditions as they actually are. The cursing accomplishes nothing except the soaking of one who stands still in useless protest. The learning allows movement, progress, arrival at destinations that the one who argues will never reach. Stand firm when tested. Life will test you. This is not a possibility, but a certainty. The test will come regardless of. Save your strength for what can be changed, for where your influence counts. There are always things that can be changed. There are always places where your effort matters, where your attention yields results, where your action produces difference. But these places become invisible when you are consumed by argument with the unchangeable. Your strength, which is finite and precious, deserves better investment. It deserves to be spent where spending it accomplishes something. It deserves to be directed toward the changeable rather than wasted on the fixed. Accepting reality does not mean giving up. It means starting from the ground you actually stand on, not from where you wish you were. This distinction is crucial. Acceptance is so often confused with resignation, with surrender, with the abandonment of hope. But acceptance is none of these things. Acceptance is simply acknowledgement of where you are. It is the recognition that this moment, these circumstances, this situation is your starting point. You may wish you were somewhere else. You may prefer different ground beneath your feet. But wishing and preferring do not relocate you. Only accepting where you actually stand allows you to begin the journey to somewhere else. From that firm ground, all change is possible. Notice what acceptance provides. When you stop arguing with where you are, when you stop insisting that your starting point should be different, you gain something invaluable, firm ground. You have a foundation from which to move. You have a clear view of what actually needs to be addressed. You have the stability that comes from standing on what is real rather than balancing on what you wish were real. From this firm ground, and only from this ground, change becomes possible. All progress requires knowing where you begin. All movement requires acknowledging your current location. From that acceptance, all progress begins. Progress cannot begin from denial. It cannot begin from argument with facts. It cannot begin while you are still insisting that your starting point is wrong, that your circumstances should be different, that the ground beneath your feet should be other than it is. Progress begins in the moment of acceptance, in the instant when you stop fighting against what is and turn your attention toward what might be. This is not the end of effort, but the beginning of effective effort. This is not the death of hope, but the birth of realistic hope. When you stop arguing with life, you free yourself from bitterness and regret. Consider what bitterness actually is: the ongoing argument with something that has already happened, the perpetual protest against an outcome already determined. And what is regret but the same argument extended backward in time, the insistence that the past should have been different? When you stop arguing, when you accept what is and what was, both bitterness and regret lose their foundation. They cannot survive in a mind that has made peace with reality. You gain clarity, focus, and the ability to adapt. These are the fruits of acceptance. Clarity emerges when the fog of resistance dissipates. You see clearly because you are no longer distorting your vision with wishes about how things should look different. Focus becomes possible when energy is no longer scattered across futile battles with the unchangeable. All your attention can be directed toward what matters. And adaptation, that essential skill for navigating a constantly changing world, requires first acknowledging what has changed. You cannot adapt to a reality you refuse to accept. This is how you move forward, not by cursing the rain, but by learning how to walk in it. The rain will fall. This is beyond your control. You can stand in the downpour and rage against the sky, demanding that the clouds disperse, insisting that you should not be wet, arguing with the weather as though the weather might eventually agree with you. Or you can accept that rain is falling and ask yourself how to continue your journey despite it. You can learn to walk in rain. You can find shelter when necessary. You can adjust your plans, your pace, your expectations to account for conditions as they actually are. The cursing accomplishes nothing except the soaking of one who stands still in useless protest. The learning allows movement, progress, arrival at destinations that the one who argues will never reach. Stand firm when tested. Life will test you. This is not a possibility, but a certainty. The tests will come regardless of. When you are tested, resist the urge to shrink or to run. Both impulses will arise. Shrinking feels like safety if you make yourself smaller. Perhaps the test will pass over you. Perhaps you will escape notice. Perhaps you can survive by becoming invisible. Running feels like wisdom. If you remove yourself from the situation, the testing ends. But neither shrinking nor running serves you. Both are forms of surrender, acknowledgments that you cannot withstand what faces you. Resist these urges. They lie about what you are capable of enduring. Hold your ground, even if your voice shakes. The shaking is acceptable. The fear is permissible. You need not be calm to be firm. You need not be confident to be courageous. You need only to remain where you are, to not retreat, to continue standing even while trembling. A shaking voice that speaks truth is infinitely stronger than a steady voice that speaks surrender. Let your actions speak, not your fears. Fear will have much to say during testing. It will narrate catastrophe. It will predict defeat. It will explain in detail why retreat is sensible and firmness is foolish. Let fear speak to itself. Do not give it an audience. Instead, let your actions be your statement. What you do in the moment of testing says everything about who you are. Your actions speak a language more eloquent and more honest than any words. Stand firm, and in time you will realize that nothing can move you unless you permit it. This is the ultimate discovery that awaits those who endure. The tests continue, the pressures persist, the trials arrive as they always have, but something has changed. You have become immovable not by external force, but by internal decision. Nothing moves you because you do not permit movement. The power that once belonged to circumstances now belongs to you. Stand firm. The realization awaits Let time handle what you cannot. Patience is a power few possess. In a world that celebrates speed, that rewards immediacy, that worships the quick fix and the instant result, patience has become almost countercultural. It is a strength that appears as weakness to those who cannot understand it, a power that looks like passivity to those who measure strength only by visible action. Yet patience is among the most formidable forces available to a human being, quiet, unassuming, but capable of achieving what force and urgency never could. Most want immediate solutions, instant relief, quick victory. Watch how people approach their difficulties. See the demand for resolution now, the insistence on answers today, the impatience with any timeline longer than the immediate. We have been trained by a culture of instant gratification to expect that every problem should yield to direct attack, that every desire should be fulfilled upon demand, that waiting is a failure of effort rather than a form of wisdom. This training serves us poorly. It creates expectations that reality cannot meet and produces frustration when reality refuses to conform. When they cannot force outcomes, they grow anxious, desperate, defeated. This is the inevitable progression when patience is absent. The outcome refuses to yield to force, as many outcomes will, and anxiety rises. More pressure is applied, more effort expended, but still the outcome remains unchanged. Desperation follows, that frantic energy that makes everything worse while trying to make things better. And finally, defeat, the collapse that comes when it becomes clear that all the forcing in the world cannot produce what only time can deliver. But not everything can be solved by action. This truth runs counter to everything we have been taught about achievement and success. We believe that problems exist to be solved, that obstacles exist to be overcome, that every challenge yields to sufficient effort applied with sufficient determination. And sometimes this is true, but not always. Some problems dissolve rather than get solved. Some obstacles move on their own when given enough time. Some challenges simply pass, requiring nothing from us except the patience to let them pass. Some things must be left to time. This is not failure. This is not surrender. This is recognition of a fundamental truth about how the world works. Time is a force in its own right, a power that operates whether we acknowledge it or not, a healer and transformer that does its work without our permission and often without our awareness. Some things must be left to this force because no other force can address them. They are not yielding to our efforts because our efforts are not what they require. Trusting time is an act of courage. It takes no courage to struggle. Struggle is instinct, automatic, what we do without thinking when difficulty arrives. But trusting time, stepping back when every instinct urges forward, releasing when every impulse demands grasping, waiting when every fiber wants action, this requires something more than instinct. It requires the courage to believe that stillness can accomplish what movement cannot, that patience can achieve what force will never reach. It means releasing your grip on what you cannot change today and trusting that tomorrow may bring new possibilities. The grip is so tight, so automatic, so deeply ingrained. We hold on to our problems as though holding them somehow helps. We clutch our difficulties as though our clutching might eventually produce resolution. But the grip accomplishes nothing. It only exhausts the one who grips. Releasing this grip is terrifying because it feels like giving up, like abandoning responsibility, like admitting powerlessness. But it is none of these things. It is simply the acknowledgement that today's possibilities are not the only possibilities, that what cannot change now may yet change later. Not all wounds heal at once. The body knows this. No one expects a deep cut to close overnight or a broken bone to mend in a day. We understand that physical healing has its own timeline, its own process, its own requirements that cannot be rushed without consequence. Yet we expect emotional wounds to heal immediately, psychological injuries to disappear the moment we decide they should, spiritual damage to repair itself on our schedule. But these wounds follow the same laws as physical ones. They heal in their own time, at their own pace, through processes we can support but cannot force. Not all answers appear when demanded. We stand before our questions with such impatience, demanding that clarity arrive now, that understanding come today, that the fog lift the moment we wish it away. But answers have their own timing. Some questions can only be answered by experience not yet acquired, by perspective not yet developed, by maturity not yet reached. The answer may be coming, traveling toward us through time, but it has not arrived because it cannot arrive yet. Some victories are born from waiting, not striving. Consider how many triumphs came not from pushing harder, but from holding steady. Consider how many problems solved themselves when left alone. Consider how many situations transformed not through intervention, but through the simple passage of time. These victories are real, though we rarely celebrate them. They do not satisfy our desire for agency, our need to feel that we have done something, but they are victories nonetheless, and sometimes they are the only victories available. When you are powerless to change a situation, do not exhaust yourself in fruitless struggle. Powerlessness is a difficult thing to accept. We resist the acknowledgement that our influence has limits, that our power extends only so far, that some things lie beyond our reach no matter how desperately we stretch. But this resistance costs us dearly. The fruitless struggle drains resources needed for struggles that might actually bear fruit. The exhaustion it produces leaves us weakened for the moments when our strength could make a difference. Step back. Create distance between yourself and the situation you cannot change. From this distance, perspective becomes possible. From this distance, the situation reveals its true proportions. You are not what others think. All your life, people have tried to define you by your mistakes, your achievements, your reputation. From your earliest days, voices have surrounded you with their interpretations of who you are. Parents, teachers, friends, strangers, all have offered their versions of your identity, their assessments of your worth, their conclusions about your potential. Some spoke with kindness, hoping to encourage. Others spoke with cruelty, hoping to diminish. But all of them, regardless of intention, attempted to place you in a box of their own construction, to reduce the infinite complexity of your being into a simple label they could understand. They attach labels, cast judgments, offer unsolicited advice. The labels arrive constantly smart or stupid, successful or failed, worthy or worthless. Each interaction brings new judgments, new assessments, new pronouncements about what you are and what you are not. The advice flows endlessly, telling you what you should do, who you should be, how you should change to better fit someone else's vision of acceptability. This stream of external definition never stops. It has been flowing since your first breath